Lorraine is a research associate with Cambridge University, but also director and co-founder of NAMAL, which is an organisation that we're really here to talk about today, because usually with Beyond L&D, we talk to people from the world of L&D who are using their L&D skills beyond the obvious just L&D corporate training, learning, development. Whereas with you, Lorraine, it's like the opposite, is because what you're doing is you're bringing L&D to a whole community of refugees, actually, to help them with remote work and to earn some money and support their host countries as well and communities. So we'd love to know more about that. So just first of all, tell us about NAMAL.
So NAMAL's been sort of the ideas been brewing for a long time. I've done lots of research on refugee education and employment. And what really got me thinking about this is I did a project and looking at employment for refugees in Jordan and Turkey, and I realized that one of the big barriers is just lack of opportunity. Yes, there were protectionist labour market mechanisms that prevented refugees from working remotely, but there were just lack of opportunities. And I've worked remotely for a number of years, and I thought, for me, it's been very powerful to have to work remotely, not having to depend on the labour market where I live. So I thought, well, this is such something that refugees can easily do. And because of the communities where they live, there just aren't enough jobs. So this is where the idea started. How can we bring the global community to support refugees where they live? And I was introduced to someone else, my co-founder, who was thinking the same things, but thinking the same things, but from slightly perhaps different perspectives. And we're connected by UNHCR, a friend of mine, because she lived in Jordan at the time when I was living here. We're connected. And we started our conversation. And after the first hour, we thought, right, this is what we need to do. We need to give refugees the skills to be remote workers. Because we both worked remotely. She worked for an organization where she always worked remotely, and so did I, doing different projects. And as an academic, you often work remotely with people in different parts of the world, writing papers and that sort of thing. So for me, I've had lots of experience, and I realized it's not easy to work remotely. It's hard. I learned the hard way, with technology, with how to communicate with someone who speaks different language, different culture. It's not easy. And for refugees, it's even more difficult because for us, we come from an learning environment where we're used to working with different people, quite fast-paced and working and education environment. And when I did my MA, a lot of it was sort of, distant. So I was living in the Middle East, and I was doing my MA in the UK, and so also when I started my PhD, which I haven't finished, disclaimer, again, even though you are present at the university, your work is wherever you're doing your research, and at that time my research was the Middle East. So I was used to the whole idea of not being in the same place as the people I'm working with. But I had the skills, because I developed the skills over the years. And this is when I thought, right, we need to do this for refugees. And then looking at the remote work ecosystem, I suddenly fell into the ecosystem where we met and realized there's a whole lot of people doing what we were doing out there. So there were organizations teaching people like you or I how to work remotely. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I can just partner with these organizations. So our amazing partner is called Workplaceless. And they have a program that teaches people like you or I, regular people, to be remote workers. So we formed a partnership and will adapt their curriculum to suit the refugee context. Because of course, a lot of the content is for people in sort of, conventional environments. And I know the whole idea of remote work is a young male, a young millennial. That's what people perceive as the sort of idea of a remote worker on the beach in Thailand or Bali with your laptop. But really, a remote worker can be anyone. And this is where Workplaceless and I formed a partnership, to create this, to create this entity. But more than that, a lot of people have been talking about remote work as the silver bullet to help refugees with employment. It's not the silver bullet. It's hard to work remotely. So not everyone can do it. But one thing that we find that we think important is when refugees do have the skills, so we're going to train refugees who have the technical skills, whether it's coding, translation, app design, being a virtual assistant, a teacher, but give them the soft skills. But it's still not very easy. We can't just give them a laptop and say, here, off you go. We have to really scaffold their remote work journey. So through the training, whether it's done as a standalone project or implemented with a technical training partner, a coding bootcamp or whoever. After the training is completed, we will support them throughout their, the first year or two of their remote work journey. Our other partner, which I won't say the name yet because we haven't officially announced our partnership, will provide the refugees the language tuition. So as well as having the soft skills training, they'll have a personalized tutor where they can have support for the English language needs throughout the first few years of their journey. So not only will we support them through mentorship, they'll have language support so that when they're with the teams, working with their companies, they are fully supported. And I'm in conversation with another company, hopefully they'll agree, I'll send this to them so they'll agree, that works with the teams, because we don't want to put all the focus on the individual, on the refugee. The teams where they're, who they're working with also need to understand that they have to do a really strong onboarding process. Yeah. They really have to understand that the person they're working with, yes, I'm sure they're used to work with people from different cultures and different languages, but this person is in a very difficult circumstance because they've had to flee their home. They could be living in a permanent residence, but they aren't in their home country. They had to flee their home because of the conflict. But also, I also want the organizations to realize that a refugee is only a political label. It doesn't degrade the skills they have, the experience they have. It's only a political label because they've had to flee their country because of something which has happened, which is beyond their control. And it could really happen to anyone. It could happen to any one of us. We're just lucky that, so far it hasn't happened in Europe and, or wherever we live, but it could happen to anyone. So I just feel it's important to have the organizations where they're joining, the teams which they're joining, to understand their context. So that's why we want to work with the refugee to make sure they have all the skills. They've got the soft skills, they've got the technical skills, they've got the language skills, but also there must be some focus on the team which they're joining to make sure that they are fully supportive of the person coming into their team. So that's kind of the world the ecosystem we envision.